Returning to the stage is Dr. Nikolaos Dimitriadis, and he will talk about one fascinating subject, the neuroscience of emotions and EY at work.
Cool. Let me see how many left. 2 there, 3 there. There is a bigger cluster here. Fantastic. So the only thing that stands between your lunch and you, it's me, eh? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's the challenge, as we said before. So I will try to keep it brief, which for me means a couple of hours. And also I will try to avoid using any slides, because I think that we are in this time and period in the day that it's good to be focused on me rather than on me there. So me here, not me there, okay? So, and I will try to make it as informal and participative as possible. So imagine you are in my class, undergraduate. You remember when you were at university for the first time? 3-4 years ago? 5? Huh? Okay. So imagine that. We are back, in an informal class talking about something which fascinates me. And the thing that fascinates me, I will not use it probably. But if I may, thank you, I will. So the thing that fascinates me, and it's always good to have it with you when you go to speak to people, is this: the human brain. Do you have your brain with you? I can prove it. Where is your brain then? Huh? Okay, so let's see your reflexes at 2 o'clock on Friday. Let's see your reflexes. Fantastic reflexes. You can throw it around. By the way, the brain, yes, and it doesn't have pain. Please do. I try to get rid of it, but I cannot. So if you think about it, the brain doesn't have pain receptors. So you can squeeze, you can stomp, you can throw on the wall. I will not feel pain. Okay, I might not feel anything, but absolutely no pain. So you tell me some things you know about your brains. Yes, throw it. Perfect catch. Tell me, what do you know about the brain? Anything statistic, anything that you've heard, you read, you watched a documentary and fascinated you? It can be trained, absolutely. This is why we are here. Great. Wow. Okay, the brain cannot feel pain, but it can kill somebody. Actually, it has killed millions of people in human history. So, yes, it can be trained. And why it can be trained? Because of a phenomenon, a very famous phenomenon in neuroscience, which for me is the biggest hope, the best positive message that neuroscience brings to people. It is neuroplasticity. The brain changes every day, its structures, its connectivity, the way that synapses work or don't work together. When you go to sleep, there are some specific chemicals that go through your brain and connections that you haven't used for some time. The brain says, why should they be here? They eat energy and I don't have much energy. Let me prune them up. And connections are severed, and other connections that you use a lot, they become stronger. So neuroplasticity, the ability of the human brain to change its own hardware, its own structure by itself to face the challenge, is the huge positive message of neuroscience. We can change. We can change overnight. Many people come to me and say, hey, Nikos, but can we change fast, people? Absolutely, I can change you overnight. How? If I drop a bomb here. No, sorry, not here. Somewhere close. Overnight, you will change. A dramatic, traumatic experience will change you overnight. But usually when people ask me, can we change people, they actually think positively. Of course you can change positively as well, but not overnight. Okay, positive change takes a little bit more, but negative, and this is also neuroplasticity. So whenever you hear neuroplasticity, don't think neuroplasticity is some guru, yoga, Hare Krishna, neuroplasticity will make us better. No, neuroplasticity is the ability of the brain, if a bomb drops and there's war, to immediately get into the mode of dealing with this, and feeling very bad also about it is part of neuroplasticity. Okay, so neuroplasticity is every change of the brain to adapt to current conditions, and it happens daily, even if you don't know it. Anything else that you know about the brain? It's kind of ask the neuroscience in residence today, the neuroscientist in residence. Any other idea or thing that you know about the brain and you want to share? Yes?
Is it true that our brain loves repetition, loves patterns?
And this is exactly, we call it when it fires together, it wires together. Or don't use it and you will lose it. You've heard about these things. The ability of the brain to understand that it is correcting something is by strengthening the connections over time. Habitual behavior. What is habitual behavior? Habitual behavior is a behavior that the brain learned that it saves energy, time, it has good outcomes predictably, time after time. So let me not waste very important resources in doing neuroplasticity. I will do it somewhere else. Thus, let me go into repetitive, predictable, and trustworthy behavior. That's exactly what the brain, but it's not that the brain loves this all the time. I would say it loves it when it works, because when it doesn't work, and this is called prediction error, so you do the same thing and you get the same result every time, but you do it 20 times, you get the same result, you talk to a colleague, and the colleague is fantastic, and tomorrow the colleague is again fantastic, so the brain gets into the habit of understanding, predicting constantly that this colleague tomorrow will be again fantastic, but in the 21st iteration with the colleague is awful. Whoops. Trauma, the brain will say, my prediction was not correct. Let me change. It will not change immediately if the heat of the bad prediction is not as bad. If it is bad, it will change immediately. It will try once again. It will try once again. It's like in a relationship. If you love your partner very much, but your partner does a mini mistake, you will turn a blind eye.
Yes. Change instant because after a certain time, the brain remembers the previous behavior. Trauma can affect instantly, but after some time, with Corona, we are back on the same pattern as before.
Absolutely. Why? Because it is very easily to adapt to a better situation. That's very easy for the brain. Don't we say in English, oh, I could get used to that? Why do we have this expression in English? Because for the brain to adjust to a more beneficial situation, it's easier and faster. What happens if you have to adapt to a war? That's a much more difficult and painful. So absolutely, yes. But when you create for your employees a positive environment, their brain will adjust much faster. That's the thing. Because it's easier and it's better. Yes? Yes. Correct.
How can we use this anticipation, let's say, to better serve the employee, clients, customers, partners, or something? So in this case, when you anticipate something, maybe you don't take into consideration all the conditions that are currently, at hand.
So this would be a misfire of the brain. So one of the most fascinating ways of looking at the brain today, and one of the things that you should remember is that the brain makes predictions. Why does the brain makes predictions? Because the brain has to manage energy which is finite. It's not infinite. So the brain every day has an amount of energy translated into glucose and blood flow and oxygen, which it has to use to do whatever it has to do. So what would be better for the brain? To be constantly reactive? Oh, this happened, let me give this energy here. Oh, this happened, we would die. So it's much better for the energy to predict what happens in the next second, millisecond, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 1 hour, to make sure that through this proactiveness is ready to allocate the energy that is needed to make you alive and survive. So prediction is an amazing way that especially the human brain, not only the human brain, uses in order to be able that it has the energy that is needed to correspond to with the challenge that you live. How does it do this? And that's amazing. So it has been discovered that actually the brain works according to the ideas of an old statistician. It is called Bayes. The guy and the approach is called Bayesian approach. Bayesian statistics, which are not very popular today, but Bayesian thinking is how the brain works. So look how your brain works. My brain, while I walk around here and I talk to you and I'm focused on what I'm saying to you, my brain does many other things. It doesn't depend my survival to where I am focused. This would be disastrous, by the way. If the brain depended on me to survive, I would already be dead. How? I go out of my home in the morning and I see my best friend across the street. My best friend, I step on the street and the bus hits me. So the brain cannot depend on where my attentional focus is given by me. My brain has to scan the environment without me knowing, all the time to make sure something is not happening. How does it do this? I will give you just one example. Can you please all look at me for 3 seconds, and we will count down these 3 seconds. Please try not to move your eyes anywhere else. On me. And we will count together. 3, 2, 1, 0. 4 seconds. Please try not to move your eyes to the beautiful coast behind. So, look at me. Let's all count down together. Let's go. 3, 2, 1, 0. How many of you moved your eyes? Thank you. So you all move your eyes. All of you. How often? 5 places per second. So the average sudden movement of the eye, it's like a very sudden move to any direction, happens 3 to 5 times per second without you knowing it, without you controlling it, and it's happening so fast that you cannot even see it. So I look at you, you look at me, your eyes still move around. Why? Because, as we said, the brain cannot depend on this slow, very easy to focus somewhere and to find something interesting and remain. And then, a bear comes and eats me. So no. Your eyes move all the time, and you don't control this process. And during this eye movement process, the brain gets a lot of information that it will use in order to update the model and to the present. So it will not depend only on what you see, what you perceive, what you in your consciousness you are aware of. It will do it anyhow with huge amounts of more information. How much information? The brain receives 11 million bits of information per second. Through your senses, external information. Because it has also internal information. Am I hungry? Do I have pain? Am I tired? This is internal information system. There is an external information system, your senses, your eyes, and it collects 11 million bits of information per second. Only the external. This is only perceptual information, from which, by the way, visual is 10 million. This is why we say that humans are visual beings. Most of the information, perceptual we get from around the world is actually dedicated to vision. This is why we have a whole lobe. We have 1/4 of the cortex, which is here in the back, called occipital lobe, dedicated completely to vision. While the other senses, they share cortexes. So this is how important vision is. So look at this. From these 11 million pieces of information that come into your brain per second, how much do you see as conscious experience? When you say, this is me, I'm Nikos, I'm standing here with you, I see a light there, it hits me, these 2 nice people are looking at me, there is a nice... How much per second is of this information that I see as reality? 1 million? Oh, okay, we are close, It's 50 to 60. 50 to 60, not 50 to 60,000, 50 to 60 bits with it seems that there is a ceiling of 120 bits per second, what you call reality. So where is the magic happening? Where is the power? In the 50 and the 60? Although there are people that say this 50, 60 is important, and it is important, but it's actually a small part of the story. What I'm here today to tell you is that what you consider you or conscious reality is a very small, I wouldn't say insignificant, although there are neuroscientists that call it even insignificant. It plays its role, but you are system 1.2.3.4. This is what we are. And everything else is in the unconscious part. So back to predictions. So by collecting information, how the brain does it. Look at this. I'm walking down here, look at this. I'm walking down here. What did I say? The eyes look around 3 to 5 times per second. I'm talking to Boris. Now, my brain, look what it does. I'm talking, hey, Boris, what about my brain? It took me 1 second to put my foot down. It calculated up to 100,000 times per second. You imagine the speed? Okay. It calculates how much I have to unconsciously balance my body, how much should I extend my foot down, where should I put my hands in order to land as I predict appropriately. If And it's not one prediction, it predicts and updates the prediction every few milliseconds. So I do this, and for me, I'm talking to Boris, but my brain has to make sure that I land in the right way. Now, if I land in the right way, this is prediction correct. The brain releases normal amounts of dopamine to make itself happy, and it creates a memory that I calculated correctly. So next time I'm talking to you, and I'm coming here to apply more or less the same force, and this is how neuroplasticity teaches the brain what is successful, and thus this prediction gets stronger in the brain. The synapses that predicted that I have to put so much power and not like this and to fall, and thus it was a correct prediction, will become stronger in the brain, physically stronger. The neurons that gave this prediction will be awarded by dopamine, but also by more strength in the connection. What if I made a mistake? And I will get, what if I made a mistake? What if, while I'm talking to Boris, I do this, and I try to fall? This is called now prediction error. What does the brain do? It kind of punishes the neurons that predicted this. It withholds dopamine. What happens when dopamine is withheld? Depression. So it makes you a little bit sadder. And if this is repeated, it prunes the prediction. Now, it's not only one prediction. For any event in life, for how our colleagues are behaving at work, what will happen with the customers, what our competition will do. The brain creates possible, based on experience, previous learning, information. It constantly creates a portfolio of possible outcomes. This could happen, this could happen, this could happen, this could happen, this could happen. This is Bayesian thinking, actually. Now, we all have a starting point. These are called the priors. The priors are based on what you know, what you see at the current moment and how you feel. What is the possibility that every outcome of these possible ones will become true? Your predictions. Unconsciously, so the brain will say, here 20%, this is 10%, this is 30%, so we're in 60%, 15%, and 15%, or 20 and 20 to be correctly, right? So 60, 80, 100. These are called the priors. The brain starts from previous experience giving these possible outcomes. And as we go along, so as I go here and I put my foot down and the brain gets more information, and I'm demonstrating this through a physical task, but it happens with everything in life, with your friends, customers, employees. That's how the brain works. Then the brain will update the priors with new information in order then to make sure that the prediction will be as accurate as possible. So if going along, the prediction percentages change and E becomes 70%, and then E is reality, the brain, dopamine, bravo to the neurons, wiring them together, creating the learning, this is learning, creating the learning that this is how we should predict, and thus this is how we allocate energy in the future. However, if my brain predicted 70% that this will happen, and then this happens, then this is what is called prediction error, and the brain understands that whatever led to this is not good. It created pain, withhold of dopamine, pain, and then it tries next time to take this pain into account in order to predict maybe that this is the possible situation. This is what the brain does hundreds of thousands per second times, from how you walk and how you talk and how you drive and how you, before you sleep, what you think, to what you do strategy in the business. And this is when the system fails. For example, anxiety. Anxiety destroys this system. Because anxiety keeps the brain overheated, the threat management system part of the brain, amygdala, have you heard of this? The right side amygdala, because we have to. It keeps it so under stress and under threat and under attack that even if this is a mistake, it does not learn, which is so sad. For example, in the pandemic, a lot of uncertainty was created. when there is uncertainty, the brain cannot operate with Bayesian thinking because it cannot trust the priors. First of all, what priors? We didn't go through a pandemic, so the brain did not have past evidence to base decisions and allocation of energy on predictions, so panic. Then, when the pandemic was unfolding, there was so much conflicting information. Scientists changing their minds, government changing their minds. Do you remember 14 days to flatten the curve? Yeah, 2 years later, we're still flattening. So, which is normal. I'm not. Then there were conspiracy theories for Bill Gates and I don't know 5G, and so there is a mess here. And unfortunately, this mess, one of the ways of the brain to solve this mess is to attach itself to one outcome and constantly predict this, believing that someday will be true. And this solves so many problems for the brain, energy-wise. Of course, it creates many problems in life. So, for example, you read the conspiracy theory. This conspiracy theory made your brain calm because it understood the pattern. That's what the brain tries to do, tries to find patterns. Understood the pattern, and thus, even when, let's say, the apocalypse was predicted and it doesn't happen, instead of the brain learning and pruning the connections that predicted the non-actualized event, it says, no, it is not the mistake of my brain, it's the mistake of the world. So next time. So you are anxious at work, you say, okay, that's it, they will fire me on Friday. Everybody says, what's your name? Perina, we will not get fired. No, I know, I got an email. Friday comes, nobody fires you. You say, oh, okay, I was lucky this time. But I've heard there is a big meeting next Wednesday. Next Wednesday. And every time, the brain will not use new information to update the system. For me, this is the saddest and most difficult situation of the brain that harms its own ability to learn and change. Anxiety is a big part of this. However, what was the main message today? And we will continue. Please jump in and ask is the following. Okay, is the following. So this is the most important question, one of the most important questions that anybody can ask you in your life. And when I ask it to you, please try to feel the answer. Okay, so I will ask you, try to feel how does this make you decide? Where would you go intuitively? I'm in the forest and I walk, prediction, correct. I'm in the forest. If I start running because I thought I've heard a noise, do I run because I am afraid? Or am I afraid because I'm running? It's the most important philosophical decision, apart from the philosophies that are about afterlife and the essence of humans. Actually, when it comes to human nature, this is the most important question that anybody will ask you. Do I run because I'm afraid? Or am I afraid because I'm running? This, by the way, is not my question. Is the question of one of my favorite scientists, philosophers of all time. He's called William James. He's considered the father of American psychology, and he was the first one to call psychology. He established the first called psychology class in Harvard. He's really a legend, not only because he was a pioneer, he really understood some things very well. Not all, but many. So, how did you feel?
You're running because you're afraid, because the trigger, the sound, made you scared.
Excellent. Now, I predict that for most of you, this is the answer. Most of you, not all, thank you. Why this answer initially for most of you makes sense, and as it has been shown in research globally? Because we live our lives believing that these 50 to 60 bits of information that I mentioned, that it is our bandwidth for conscious thinking, runs the show. So experientially, daily, we feel that there is a top-down decision-making process. What does it mean? First, I need to be aware of something, the noise. Then I need to value the noise, maybe it's a bear. The thought of a bear or a wolf or somebody dangerous in the midnight walking back home after a party, then will make me feel unsafe and will motivate me to run. This is a typical top-down decision-making process. And here's now the punchline. That's not how the brain works. That's scientifically not just outdated, it's wrong. Okay, it's not even controversial what I'm telling you. That's not how the brain works. If the brain worked like this, we would not be here today. We would all be dead as species. Because, you remember, I go out of my home, I see my friend, hey, Boris, I haven't seen you for a long time. And then the bus hit me. I didn't hear the bus. I didn't notice the bus. I didn't evaluate the threat of the bus. I didn't create the reaction because I focused on my friend. The brain does not work like this. The brain has an amazing evolutionary structure that makes it clear that life does not depend on conscious perception. Actually, conscious perception comes much late. Most of scientists now, neuroscientists that I belong, and some psychologists say that consciousness comes so much late into the game that we cannot attribute things like decision-making, motivation, behavior. They cannot be attributed to consciousness. It's coming too late into the game. So how does the brain actually work if it does not work top-down? Okay, look at this. So yeah, fight or flight is one of the strategies that it has. So look at this. That's your eye, right? Okay, maybe it's your eye. A little bit Picasso. So the eye receives light. Now, you think that as soon as the eye receives light, through the optical nerve, the nerve that takes the light from the eye, from the retina back here, and it takes it to the brain, that it brings it directly to you as a viewer. Absolutely not. You are the last you will see what's happening, and you will not see what's actually happening, but what the brain wants you to see. And it's very intelligent. I'm running because many of you think, so the brain is stupid. No. The brain is intelligent and does this process. Look what happens. The brain receives light. First of all, where the optical nerve connects to the back of the retina, the connection point does not have receptors. Means for this specific connection point between the eyeball and your optical nerve, the eye does not receive information from the world. Which means, can you do this? Please, all of you, do this. Okay, and look at me. There should be, look around, there should be 2 holes, black holes, where your thumb is. You don't receive data from the environment. You don't see it. Who fills in the gap? Who paints this point while it's black? The brain does it, because the brain has a role. There is a reason why the brain does this. So you see me, right? Look at that, I will go next to myself. Okay, you see me. Focus on me. I'm sure you see it, blue, yellow, right? That's your brain does it. Because color photoreceptors, because we have 2 types of cells to receive light. The color ones are concentrated around the center of the retina, which means that your peripheral vision is black and white. You don't receive color in your peripheral vision, but you see color. Who paints it? The brain paints it. The brain does all this for you. Why? We'll get in a minute. Why the brain fills in all these gaps without telling us. So you receive the light, okay? The optical nerve does not take the information to where consciousness starts. Absolutely not. It takes it to a part in the middle of the brain, in what is called the limbic system, to something that is called the thalamus. Thalamus, a chamber, thalamus. Sorry for my Greek. Thalamus. So the thalamus then will decide. This is the main part of light. There are 2 more, which again have to do nothing about consciousness. Either it will go to thalamus, or it will go to the hippocampus to decide if it is light or day and what to do with your melatonin and other stuff. And it will go to something that's called the superior colliculus that moves your eye in these 5 places that we said. Nothing has to do with consciousness. It goes to the thalamus. The thalamus has to decide the following: what to do with the information that is coming in. Is it something dangerous? Is it a shadow that looks like a bear. All this is unconscious. You are not still online. Forget it. Milliseconds. Now, if the thalamus decides that the shadow is dangerous, we'll immediately activate the amygdala. Okay, the one amygdala. The amygdala will create a series of stressful responses, like a cascading event. What the amygdala will do, first of all, it will go and start asking for the glands to produce adrenaline, because adrenaline is fast. Later on, cortisol, because it will keep you running. Also, it will send a message to the heart, start pumping blood, because we'll start running. Also, it will send messages to your skin, and you'll start sweating minuscule pieces of sweat. You never see it, you never touch it. We have devices, we measure these things. You never, but why does the brain prepares the skin to sweat? What is sweat, evolutionary speaking? What is the benefit? Cooling. So if I run, I need to cool down to run more. So all this, your visual perception is changing. The brain starts to, depending on the situation, are jumping more around or focusing on the threat. All this is, as I said, completely unconscious processes. By the way, we don't call it subconscious. Subconscious is now a not accepted term in neuroscience, okay? For reasons, Freudian reasons that we can discuss later. So all this happens in the amygdala. Where are you? You are not there yet. Listen now to the question that I asked you. So the brain, with this movement of the eye, but it happens with the ear, with movement of the eye, noticed a possible movement of the bush. The information went to the thalamus. The thalamus valued this information, evaluated as dangerous. In milliseconds, started changing your heart rhythm, your pulse, your skin, your focus, the chemicals in your body, so to fight or flight in this case. Okay? It even turned your body. It's unbelievable. We do these neuromarketing studies. We put you in front of a laptop. We show you something. And we have the ability to measure the millicentimeters that you went towards the screen or backwards. You don't know. We show you something. Did you move? No. But we measure that you moved. And there are two motivational networks in the brain, approach or avoidance. So if the brain likes something, it will actually move your body. You don't know it, but you are physically closer to that. And we measure this with high accuracy. So I thought I saw the bush, not me, the brain. Everything started. Even the brain gave a signal to my motor cortex, which is the action part, to start running. So, do you run because you are afraid, or are you afraid because you are running? Absolutely, you are afraid because you are running. The brain decided, that's a decision, cascaded all the possible mechanisms in the body to start running, change your perception, even start moving, and at some moment, you come in. Okay, you come in and you say, yes, I'm afraid and I'm running. This is how the brain works. And I said, what I'm saying is not even controversial. This means that the brain has the ability, by the way, to finish the story, and this is, if you like Daniel Goleman and emotional intelligence, you've heard about amygdala hijack. This is what amygdala hijack looks like. When the brain feels that there is a threat and creates the stress response. Stress is a good thing. When I say stress, don't get stressed. It's a good thing. It makes the body move. And so this is the non-amygdala hijack, which happens for when you're afraid, but sometimes to do fantastic things. It's not only negative, it can be positive. Amygdala hijack. Now, let's say the thalamus says, this information is great, it's nice, no problem. Nothing for the amygdala to be excited. What does the brain do this? Then, from the thalamus, we'll go to the back of the brain, in my occipital lobe, and something called the primary visual cortex, the visual center of the brain, to then decide where else it has to move to create the rich visual experience we have. Still unconscious. Still, nothing comes in your mind's eye. It goes from, this is called V1, visual center 1. It goes to visual center 2. It goes to visual center 3. And when it enters visual center 4, we start saying, I see what's happening in front of me. So you see, we are very late in the process. And the beauty of the system is the following. The brain considers neutral information as dangerous. This is why the brain does all this. Information for the brain cannot be neutral. It has to have meaning, value. It has to motivate the brain to do something. And the brain will make all the possible calculations and will receive all the 11 million bits of information per second to make sure that it keeps us alive. Now, think about the following. What is more safe? What is more safe? When I sit here and my brain thought that there is something dangerous in the bush. The bush is shh. Who survived from our ancestors? Those that said, it's nothing. And 1 out of 10, it was something. Or the ancestors that said, oops, there is something, and it was nothing. Which of the two survived, so we have their genes? Absolutely. And although I said it a second, it's called problem type 1. Problem type 1 is the problem where the brain identifies a pattern and the pattern is not there. It's called a false positive. It says positive and it's false. This type of mistakes the brain loves because they are more safe. If I don't find a pattern and it eats me, I will not have kids, so we will not have these genes. This is why the brain loves patterns. We said before, and this is why the brain has the Bayesian thinking mode, because of exactly the fact that it has to find patterns. Yes?
Does that mean that centuries or millions, years from now, our brains will be really paranoid?
Fantastic. Listen to this. What happens in schizophrenia? What happens with psychedelic drugs? It shuts down the thalamus. That's the problem. The thalamus is the nature's gatekeeper of what to do with perceptual information. When it shuts down, psychedelics do this. Information jumps around the brain without any logic, without any pattern. So you see things that they're not there. You feel things that they're not there. As of course in schizophrenia as well. You see, you hear voices. So we have to really take care of how the huge amounts of information we're receiving makes our brain psychotic. It's a very good point. Yes. And there are books and studies written about this. Yes.
In this case, when you're speaking about psychedelics and schizophrenia, is this information that we see, is this part of the 11 million bits, or this is invented?
It's absolutely inventive, and there is even now, there is a combination, but the 11 million bits are a trigger to the brain to see patterns, faces, to hear noises that are not there. So reality is just a trigger. It will then take the small thing and make it huge. But it doesn't need to. When we sleep, is there any sensory information? Do you remember your last dreams? You dreamed of something. Did you dream ever and you thought it was reality? Of course, that's the whole point. Otherwise, it's called vivid dreaming. So what is happening there? Your brain creates a huge sensory stage for you to feel reality with zero external input. I'm coming. Zero external input. So actually, when you hear neuroscientists say that reality is either controlled hallucination, that's a latest term, controlled hallucination, and you'll see why controlled, okay, or it's an illusion, not something that it's not there. It's there, but probably something else, is because of that. Because you have to really understand that the brain creates the reality inside. There is no reality that comes from the outside and it's offered as it is. What does it mean as it is? What does it mean as it is? If there is some bush moving there, what does it mean my brain to tell me the bush is as it is? If my brain says, there is some sound there, there is some movement, I have zero other information to infer one or the other. What is the problem if the brain was actually processing information like that? If the brain waited for actual information and not assumptions and predictions, what would be the problem? Exactly. So the brain doesn't give a damn about actual information or about neutral information or information as it's useless. So the brain tries to constantly decode, paint, give values, label information that is coming in order to immediately make meaning, because the brain is a meaning-making machine. It has to understand what is my role here, both positive or negative, mostly negative, because avoiding the car to hit me than looking at my friend that makes me happy makes me survive. So the brain indeed has this negativity bias, which is fantastic. It's a good thing. It gives 2 to 3 times more power to negative situations than to positive. So this is what the brain does. And you know what? Let me use, it's not a very good analogy, but I think it helps. There is a football game, and there are cameras in the football game. The cameras is your eyes. The camera receives the information from the game, right? In electricity, it doesn't have information, makes signals, pixels. Sends this to a van outside the stadium, which is the first processing of the signal. Then it sends it to the central network station, TV station, and there is a director that puts up and down what you will see and choose and all this. And then it beams this with all the noise, delay, and this, and then this comes up to your home and say, I watch TV. This is how your brain works. You see how much processes before? And there is a delay. There is an actual physical delay. Déjà vu is probably because of this. You've heard of déjà vu? Because this takes time, there is a theory that says that through other routes, this information reached a little bit faster the brain, so you see the same picture immediately again and say, oh, this is something that, but it's probably some misfire of the system of how visual information is in your body. So, number 1, you don't take decisions, your brain takes decisions. How far before you think you took a decision, the brain take it? Up to 11 seconds. The last research shows that up to 11 seconds that you think you took a decision, your brain already took it. This started in 1982 with the most famous study in neuroscience. The most famous study was a guy that wanted to prove that we have free will. He made a study. He found that actually the brain decides 2.5 seconds before we think we decided, and he came out and said, my God, I killed free will. Benjamin Libet, and all the studies that we have, even the ones that attack him on interpretation, they confirm his results. And not only confirm, from 2.5 seconds, we went now to 11 seconds. That we can physically measure with electroencephalogram your brain, give you a choice, and measure when the brain started creating the signal on your motor side, where you will do A or B, and it builds, you take the decision somewhere here, and then it falls. It's already, the brain already decided, and you think that you took the decision here. The brain already told you what to do. So, we have to reallocate ourselves within our brains. Another analogy, this is my latest, Boris, you hear it for the third time. I'm not into motorsport racing. Are you into motorsport? But not F1, the mountain ones. Do you follow the motor racing in the mountains? There is the driver. What is the role of the co-driver? Map. Is the map. The driver lives in the now, takes all the decisions what to do with the car, and has the motivation to do it. But the brain works better with mapping. So it needs a co-driver, which is our consciousness, that has the ability to think in the future and in the past. That's uniquely characteristic of humans. In the animal kingdom, we have very little evidence that other brains can really imagine the future 5 years from now, maybe a few minutes, but not so much. So the brain works better with better mapping. So imagine your consciousness not as decision-making. Your consciousness does not make it feels like you're taking decisions, but you're just reading out the script. The decision is already taken. And it couldn't be otherwise, and I'm finishing. You know what? It couldn't be otherwise. It's an electrical signal. Not the building of the decision is electric signal, of course. Every thought is an electrical signal. And if we are scientists, or if we believe in science, electricity not only can be studied, can be predicted. Okay? So the role of consciousness of thinking is to assist intuition. Not to cancel it, not to attack it, but to assist it. Because your brain has many systems that fight between themselves. The brain is not, again, Hare Krishna, Hallelujah, Kumbaya. We call it the competitive jungle. It's a mess what's happening with different parts trying to dominate your behavior. There is many voices. And the brain, in the end, with an algorithm, will decide which one to listen to for the prediction that we said. Okay, so maybe your first intuition is wrong. Okay, good. The point of you is not because your first intuition is wrong to call all intuitions wrong. Is to allow with your co-driver, your consciousness, to a little bit better readjust in order to bring the motivation out. You know why? Because thinking does not create movement. The thinking part of the brain does not have the biological connections to make you move. If you were born just with the ability to think, you would die within the first hours. You wouldn't be able to move anything, not even take a breath. Because thinking does not, the thinking parts of the brain are not the ones where behavior happens, action happens. And that's a big mistake of corporations. You try to motivate your people with strategies and numbers and calculations and pie charts and big meetings that you get it, this is the gap. And you think that if somebody gets it rationally, this will say to the driver to drive. No, you just convince the co-driver. Now you need to convince the driver. And the driver has completely different motivations, completely different language that understands, completely different agendas. What a big mistake. What did we do with our society, with our schools, with our citizens? Huh? Very big part. With our companies, with our teams, with our friends, with our families. We went into this rabbit hole of thinking that we're the thinking, you know the thinking man, the statue? Yeah, what happened with the thinking man? The bear came and ate him because he was just thinking. Behavior, action, motivation is somewhere else in the brain. I think it's about time that we reestablish what we do. We relocate ourselves within our bodies and we see humanity for what really is. An intuitive, emotionally intelligent. I'm not talking about emotional intelligence. I'm talking about the intelligence of the emotions. It's a little bit different. Our emotions are intelligent. Actually, we know from studies that when experts decide intuitively in the most stressful situations, they're much more accurate than when they try to do more analytics. A trained brain will take the best possible action, not always the correct one, but the best possible action every time. Your role as leaders and managers and team workers is to allow for your brain to feel, not to understand, to feel what really motivates it. And to do the same with your team. And to create a brain-friendly environment where blah, blah is for something, but emotions and passion and trust and relationships is for something else. Last thing, because my speech was also said artificial intelligence, all this now is followed by technology. There is something called emotional facial analysis. It can measure your emotions, your implicit emotions, the one that the brain and the thalamus and all this creates without you knowing. Because as your eyes move 3 to 5 times without you knowing or controlling it, the same happens with your micro muscles of your face. We have more than 60 micro muscles. They move all the time. You don't control them. We don't see them. They move very fast. But my empathy system decodes your emotions, feelings, and intentions based on this. Even before I think why you say the thing you say. So you meet somebody, this somebody says fantastic stuff, and you said, well, yes, he said all the great stuff, but something, I don't feel, what is this? This is the brain through intuition telling you, hey, I noticed the face did not match the words. So I will just demonstrate it. It's a great device, a great program. You can download it free. You can go, there's one of the biggest companies in the world. It's called Affectiva. You can find it. Affectiva Emotional Facial Analysis is a free app. Of course, professionally, we use the most advanced one. So look at this. What I will do is the following. I will launch it. And look what we can do now in companies and what we do in companies. So this is the This is the, okay. Our friend Berina here. Just give me a sec, Berina, for these two. Okay. Don't worry, you did it already. You don't have to do anything. So what does it say? For the emotions, how much % of joy? 100% of joy. It's the best way to finish the seminar. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Be careful of your brains. And, wait. Does it work? And buy my books. Only for you, my friend, special discount. So yeah, you get more information here. And follow me on social media. I put a lot of this stuff. The age of neuroscience is here. Embrace for it. Prepare your kids, by the way.
Thank you so
Okay,
much. We will have a lunch break if
Let's go
you're
for the lunch
hungry.
break.
So see ya at 4.